Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Today, joining me on the show is Jamie Graham. How you doing, Jamie?
Hey, really good. Yeah, really excited for this week. Sales are
Pick up
starting
now.
to tick up.
Yeah,
Admittedly, with some early Good Friday discounting going on, but yeah,
yeah,
good mood.
excellent. Cool. Do you want to give the audience a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my wife and I have run a beauty brand on Amazon for the past 8 years or so.
Yeah,
So we've been running that together. Started off just ourselves and then a single VA. Now we've got a team of 13, including
yeah,
ourselves.
yeah,
So we're sort of well into the multi seven figures. We've got our challenges, but it has been going pretty decent.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, big seller sessions fan. So happy to be on the show. So I've got some fun stuff to talk about.
Excellent. So yeah, we're going to be talking about different attributes of hiring, right? So there's like that hybrid model where distributed teams in-house, or where the teams meet up. And today we're going to be talking about some of the experiences that you have from a seller's point of view of hiring, some of the mistakes, some of the things that you would do next time round, etc. Right?
Yeah, I feel like I've learned some really cool lessons over the last few years that I can kind of distill in a short period of time. So I'm hoping it'll be helpful for everyone who's listening.
Cool. Let's kick it off then. Where are we starting?
So the first hires that I made
Yeah.
were like VAs. So we actually, I think we were following ASM at the time. We've done it through the Rapid Crush guys,
Yeah.
and what they were recommending at the time was that you hire people with no Amazon experience,
Mm,
but just showed good initiative. So you would give them a Google form to fill out, and they would do
mm,
everything. They would follow the instructions. So
mm,
just find like people that were relatively smart, could speak
mm.
good English, and could follow instructions. Because
Yeah.
back then there weren't really a lot of people with Amazon experience.
Yeah.
So we did actually end up finding some good people that way. But we had a lot of people that came and went. So
Yeah.
I would say, obviously, an all-round VA probably is a good place to start, particularly if your revenue is only growing slowly. In an
Mm,
ideal world, if you had a well-funded business, I would recommend actually starting someone with the sort of more experienced end, probably remote, probably Philippines or a country where there's a lot of Amazon
yeah.
experience. I would start with someone who actually has probably been doing it a while,
Mm,
have them as the kind of assistant, and then have them hire your new people as you went on.
yeah.
Because if you start with someone very junior level, you are always yourself doing all. There's a lot of higher level stuff to do, so you're always doing that kind of stuff. Whereas if you start with someone with more experience, they're actually going to be able to help you. Then they may even prevent you from making some mistakes at an early stage.
Yeah, of course. So when you were growing, I think with loads of people, when you started about 2015, 16, right?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously back then, VAs obviously it's cost effective as well. I hope you've been paying them well as well, Jamie, over in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Um, but then you get to the point where you've got an improvement on cash and stuff, so you up the experience. But you've got a setup where there's a mixture now, right? So you've got distributed teams and you've got localized teams and where they meet up and stuff.
Yeah. So we actually did the same. We did the same sort of thing. So we actually hired someone. We hired somebody local
Yeah.
who just like a good attitude, good all
Mm,
round kind of experience and admin as a kind of assistant. And then
mm,
gradually over time, we trained her up on shipping, we trained her up on various finance things, and she was able to fill a lot of different roles, a lot of different weird little gaps.
yeah.
Because as an Amazon seller and an Amazon business owner, you have to be you have to have a wide range of skills and talents and stuff to do. And the more and more plates you try and spin, invariably, the worse the business actually performs. So the more
Yeah.
you can get off your plate at an early stage, the better. And then the
Mm,
more you can try and focus on the skills that really matter and the skills that you are good at.
yeah.
So, for example, I used to do all the shipping for our company, and it's not really my strength.
Yeah.
So I was able to hand that over to some, and I was also able to hand it over to someone who was actually coming in the office to work with us every day.
Yeah.
And so that made a big difference. Because there's a lot of just like small jobs that kind of just litter up your time. Being able to
Mm,
hand over some of those was really helpful. So having her actually in the office with us was
yeah.
was great. So it'd just be the three of us. And then over time, we actually hired more people to come into the office with us. So we had some people in the office, and then we had some people remote. And at the time, all those remote people were the Philippines. We have since hired people in a few other countries as well. But having people that we could actually be in the office with every day was really helpful.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of difference. And so how many are in the office on a day-to-day basis versus, popping in once or twice a week, and then how many are distributed across the world?
Yeah, so we have coming in the office. So all of our local team are hybrid, so they do some days in the office and some days out. So we've got in Brighton, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 people who come in a couple of days, and then we've got one guy who lives a bit further north, so he only comes in once a month.
Yeah.
And then we've got I think it is 4 in the Philippines and 1 in Turkey.
Yeah. So where did you get the point? Where in the point in your business? What, right, roughly, just so we've got something tangible. Roughly, what numbers were you doing? Were you doing before you started hiring in the UK? Obviously, you start with Philippines in terms of the cost effectiveness of this as you're growing the business and needing the access to keep hold of your cash flow. Once you start doing UK hires, we're talking different language in terms of yearly wages, etc. So at what point did you start making your hires in the UK?
Yeah, so I'm guessing we must have been up to the sort of £500,000 a year revenue mark by that time. But our first hire was actually part-time.
Right.
So she wasn't actually.
So even then, you were still you were bringing them in part-time at first before you take them on full-time.
But yeah, part-time. This is another good thing to talk about, right? Part-time can be difficult. There is a smaller talent pool for part-time. So it does work particularly well for. It's often mums can sometimes be like new dads who are coming back to the workforce and they don't want to work full time. Yeah. So if you give them the flexibility, that can sometimes be a way to get really, really good talent sometimes. But you'll generally find that full-time job, good salary, that's where you will get the best applicants.
Yeah, of course, because of the level of flexibility. I think it was Michelle Venton. I think she had a team before she sold her brand. It was a team of mums, but they'd all worked in the city. They'd all earning or roughly earning towards the 6 figures, but they didn't want to go back to that life. But they got paid well part-time, and she was one of the first people that I knew was almost not fully, but almost exclusively a UK team, because that's the preferred way for her when she was building her business. So there's many different ways, obviously, to do it. But like you said, it's difficult when people need a certain amount of money to live off. Part-time means half the wages you can get at full-time when they're available to do a full-time job.
Yeah, it can. It has its advantages, but ultimately, when you really want to start scaling into 7 figures, when you really want to start growing, 50% a year, then you do need really full-time people that are living and breathing it.
Yeah. So where are we at with? Where are you going with it now in terms of when you were getting your hires? Where were you looking for the UK listeners? Where do you normally get your UK hires from?
Okay, so we would do a lot of Indeed, and at one point we did actually use a recruiter as well. Yeah. So we've only actually used a recruiter once. I would be in favor of using a recruiter more often, but my wife is the cost controller of the company and stops my overspending tendency, so she wasn't too keen on a recruiter. I think we've got a pretty good process now, so we're able to kind of find pretty good people.
Yeah, and then the other thing is with recruiters is the specialist side. I don't think I've got much change out of $5,000 a head in terms of using a recruiter, because and it's getting the volume that you need. So for engineers and PPC managers, LinkedIn, I'm sure you can use that if you want to bust your ass on there. But it's much better when someone's dedicated. Like when we got our recent PPC manager, the system that they used, it was incredible, because there was they have such a high volume of leads that come in. Then they do all the filtering process. So normally with a job application, let's say you do Indeed, you might get 20, you might get 15, etc. These are in the hundreds, if not the thousands, maybe up to 1,500 to 2,000 inbound inquiries, and then they're all whittled down. So it is a costly process to find the right people, especially if they're going to be a specialist as well.
That is impressive, and particularly I would say Amazon PPC is probably one of the hardest positions to hire for
Oh,
that I've
yeah.
ever tried to hire for.
Yeah, it took us about a year and a half to find the level of talent that we needed because we interviewed loads of people and from other agencies, and I say this respectfully, from other agencies, but they just didn't make the cut. By the time they got the technical side of the thing, they just weren't at that level. And if we need to take them to a level higher, like we know whoever we bring on, we have to train them, right? But there has to be a minimum level, knowing that they have the capacity to learn to go to the next level of what we need to bring at the agency. And that was the toughest part. This is why we used a recruiter over in Europe, and they'd done the widespread. Because it is very difficult to find PPC, especially not. I reckon it's going to be a lot easier now because a lot of the talent got sucked into the aggregators and the high street brands as well that cover Amazon for their main brands. So what happens? You had a vacuum pull of talent pulled out the marketplace, PPC people. But then you've got the ones, the B and C players of that skill level wanted A player money, but they just weren't good enough because it sent up an increase overall of wages like per head in terms of PPC people, and that's because of the demand. But I reckon that'll flatten out at some point.
Yeah, particularly for our company, the PPC is hard to manage because we're in competitive categories. The margins aren't massive. A lot of our price points are quite low.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to make it work. And you want someone that can also understand the big picture, the profits, the organic ranking, the promotions, what's going on the listing. So, once you get someone good, you definitely want to keep them on.
Yeah, without a doubt. So what did you do in terms of PPC? Because we were going to talk about that anyway. I'm a big believer for sellers. Look, go on, you go first, but then
we've done various different agencies.
Yeah.
So I tried to stay away from any agency that was going to charge a percentage of ad spend.
Yeah.
So before that, I would just have people in house, and at times, a lot of times, I was doing it myself as well. So did have had one or two good people leave, and then a couple of people where it wasn't working out.
Yeah.
Because I'm probably about 6 out of 10 on PPC, and when I start thinking that I could do a better job, I can tell that it's time to find someone else.
Yeah.
And then also worked with a few agencies as well. So one agency I worked with, the pricing was good, but I didn't actually get to speak to the people who were working on the account because of a language issue. So I would have to speak to somebody, and then they would have to go and speak to the people that were working on the account. So that didn't really work out. Then I found another agency where I did actually get to speak to the people that were working on the account. But I feel like once you get to a certain size, the ideal for me is probably to have someone in house.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Someone who is, they can be in your weekly meetings, they're available to answer questions, and they're living and breathing just your account. So it's kind of front of mind. They don't need to look anything up, and their constant focus is just your PPC. Obviously, the risk is if they leave, it can leave you in quite a lot of trouble because it can be difficult to find someone else and do a transfer over. And they may not. The other disadvantage is they don't have the benefit of seeing other accounts and what's going on in other accounts. So they don't have those kind of benchmarks from other accounts. So they can maybe not be quite up to date on new things that are coming in as well. So working with an agency as well can be advantageous as well. So we have actually worked with an agency to do our EU4 accounts because it's quite labor intensive. Germany, France, Italy, and Spain, whilst we manage UK and US, which is our main marketplaces.
Yeah, I always tell sellers don't have a PPC agency, and we'll split this down the middle to consultants. Don't use an agency until you're doing 7 figures. The amount of times I've had PPC like sellers come to me and say I was using an agency and I couldn't make numbers work, and I went, how much you turning over a month? One of them was doing 30 grand a month. And then after fees and percentage of ad spend, I said, why did they actually take you on in the first place? You were never going to make any money if you turned over 30 grand a month. Almost impossible. So that stuff annoys me. But I think there's levels. If you're doing 200 grand, 300 grand, think about using a consultant and then hire them on the basis, because you've got to reach statistical significance. Someone can't sit there on the same campaigns, especially if you've got, depends on the size of your SKU set. Playing with the campaigns all day, every day doesn't do any justice, because you need to reach statistical significance. Yeah, it's got to have time to work before you make informed decisions. So you can get a consultant, maybe say it's $50 an hour. They do 3, 4, 5, how many hours they need to do a week? Maybe 3 or 4, realistically, once it's under control. And that depends on the size of the account, and that depends whether you're incorporating using software and the adjustments or just manual only, and it depends on the amount of marketplaces that you got. So there are a number of checks and balances there. And most of the time I always say to people, do you want to hand over PPC so that you can work on other areas of the business? Yeah, so you can take that hat off knowing you trust someone to do it and then do it. Or do you need someone where you're with them all the time? You feel like you need in the office? Because some people do. They need them in the office. They feel better about that because the way they operate as a boss. So they should do it in-house. So there's different types of personalities where it's suited for to use an agency or not use an agency. But like you said, there are the pros and cons. With an agency, you just plug.
If your numeracy is at a decent level, as an aspiring seller, it's probably worth being able to do it yourself, or to at least have a 5 out of 10 understanding. Because people get sick, people leave, and also if you even to manage an agency, you need to have a basic appreciation of what's going on. And it's just PPC is now so crucial to everything. That I would say, unless you just can't handle maths at all, I would say that you should learn how to do the PPC yourself, at least at the beginning.
Yeah. So we're in agreement here is that, do it in-house up to a certain point. If you feel the need to, then you go to an agency. Generally, it's that handover point where, you're going to go, I need to build the product pipeline. I can spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a week on PPC, or I could be investing that hour more developing the product pipeline, because that's your lifeblood outside your visibility of your PPC. Both are equally got to be managed and taken care of properly. But a human can only do so many things once and have the capacity to do certain things, right? So you get to the stage like you, the size of your business, when you grow, you hand stuff over. You have to learn to trust people, whether that's in-house or external. But you need to take that off your plate, knowing someone's taking care of it and reporting back to you.
Yeah, that's right. You've got to understand your own strengths and weaknesses, where the business is at, and make those decisions about where you're going to get the best return on a full-time member of staff. Yeah. So, for example, when we first started, my wife is mostly developing the products. We're having a little look on the softwares or whatever to see what's happening. But then we realized to grow at the pace we actually want to grow, we need a full-time person looking for product opportunities, developing those products, working with the suppliers. And that's a great person to have in the office with you, so that you can actually look at samples together, look at ideas. That's a great person to have in the office with you.
And what about the tough hires, the ones where they go sideways? Have you had any of those to deal with?
Oh yeah, sure. There was a funny one where we were on a group, and someone put up this post saying he's going to have to let one of his VAs go. I think he was winding down his business or something. He put up this great ad. And we messaged him. We spoke to him. He seemed great. We offered him a job, but we didn't realize that 5 other people had also offered him a job. So this guy had accepted 6 different jobs, and we were like, "What's going on?" And then on the same thread, some people started saying, "Did anyone else hire this guy?" And it turned out that he'd accepted all these different jobs and was trying to work 22 hours a day to do all these different jobs.
Jeez.
Yeah. So we have had a lot of people that we could tell are taking on other jobs. So they start off great, and then all of a sudden, either they're not showing up to meetings on time, they're not, and then they're not focused. And basically, if someone has shown themselves not to be trustworthy, and that they're not going to do the basic part of it, then there's no real point in continuing the relationship, right? Yeah. It's a bit like say you met someone, they're a friend of a friend, you went out with them a couple of times, but every time you went out they stole 20 quid from you. You just be like, well, I don't want to be friends. I don't want to be friends anymore. Yeah, exactly. I can't trust you, right? You don't. Yeah. That's just the way some employees will always see the employer-employee relationship. They just want to get as much as they can, and they don't see it as a relationship that can benefit both of you. They don't want to work together They don't want to be part. They don't want to be like part of a team, and people like that. It's just best to let them move on.
Yeah.
We have had occasions where someone's not been working out, and we have actually put a lot of effort in, and we have been able to turn things around, which is great. But generally, that's the exception. Normally, what we find is that if someone's not quite working out, that generally, like, even though we will try our best, it normally will end up not working out. Fine with A players, it's like when you look at with an A player, you're like, oh wow, you've done all of this. That's great. Oh, and look at the quality of this, and that's smart. And they're just always impressing you, right? And then you find with people where it ends up not working out, it's like, oh, you've still not done this yet, or like, no, that's not quite what I wanted. So you kind of can tell these things quite early on, but obviously you have to take responsibility as the manager and the employer to make sure that you're doing everything in your power. And it's a challenge because you've got all your own work to do as well. And it can be difficult to stop your own work and actually think, okay, I've got to have a call with this person, make sure that they understand. I need to write clearer instructions. I need to take the time to make sure that they're enjoying this role and they're getting the support that they need. So you've got to kind of get that balance right. And what it means is more often than not, your own work has to take a back seat while you make sure that the team are happy and are being well led.
Yeah. Is there anything else we've got to cover off on the list?
I'll just say agencies versus employees. So more recently, we found various. I think if you can get a really, really good agency to do something, then it is pretty handy because it gives you. You then don't have the employee to worry about, and they will have redundancy if someone leaves. Because what you find is when you're running a small team, particularly of less than 10 people, every time someone leaves, it causes a lot of disruption.
Yeah.
And you end up having to pick up a lot of the work yourself. So, for example, we've now got an agency that handles logistics, shipping and inventory, which is great. For a long time, we've had an agency managing our bookkeeping and working as like a kind of freelance CFO. And a lot of these agencies, you'll only find a lot of really good agencies. You're only really going to find by word of mouth, and only your very best friends are going to tell you about them because like, there's a lot of these agencies that they're not famous, they're under the radar, and they're quite full. So you really need an intro, but they really move the needle.
Yeah. You all right there? Do you want some water?
Yeah, all good.
Excellent. Anything else you want to cover?
So, yeah, I personally do like the hybrid model, right? So I like to have people in the office with me. I know some people don't. Particularly when I was first starting out, before I got super busy, I like to have someone else in the office with me who could see my screen so that I would know that I would always be working and I wouldn't get distracted. Less of a concern now that I'm super busy. I don't need any extra motivation. But yeah, I just generally prefer it. It makes me happier to have people in the office. And, I want to provide jobs for local people as well. So that's a good feeling. But with our kind of margins and the way our business is, we couldn't run it with all UK staff. We just wouldn't make any money at all. And, I love giving. I know a lot of my team in the Philippines, they didn't have very good jobs in the past, or they had to commute an hour and a half each way, work these crazy hours. So I love being able to provide good jobs for them where they're happy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think if I didn't have young kids, I would probably fly to the Philippines once a year to see the team and hang out with them. So it's not been possible for a while because of COVID and family, but I would hope to get out there. So it's a beautiful country. So I would say if you can fly out and visit your team or have them come and meet you halfway or something, I would really recommend it. It's great fun.
Yeah. I mean, even with the Philippines, we've got some guys in the Philippines. I don't think I got a single team member under $12 an hour. They're $12 and up because they get taken care of properly. But I know some people pay like $5 an hour, and it's like taking the fucking piss. Do you know what I mean? These people got to live. But you got to get a balance.
It depends. It can depend like what their kind of experience level is, right?
Of course. What I meant is I've seen it out there. There's courses like Get Cheap Filipinos. Do you know what I mean? But they're having the pressure of the recession. Their cost of living is increased as well. We actually did an increase across the board just recently because their cost of living's went up. They had nothing to do with a pay rise. We just decided, right, their cost of living's gone up and we give everyone the equal amount in terms of percentage increase in wages just to cover that. and then they'll get their pay review with their 13th month at Christmas. If you take care of them, they're going to be solid. That's why, when you talk about some of them taking 2 or 3 jobs, it's probably somewhere down the line also, if you're talking about Filipinos. Someone muppet out there is paying them $2 an hour, and they need to have 2 or 3 jobs because they're being paid so low. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, on the one hand, it's nice to do the right thing and to help them build a good life for themselves and their families.
Exactly.
And on the other hand, the market's moved, right? There's a lot of these guys in the Philippines. They've got 5 to 10 years of experience now, and they've worked for good companies, and a lot of them are demanding higher wages. But it can actually sometimes, some of these more experienced ones can actually be some of your highest ROI hires.
Oh yeah.
So you might be paying them as much as someone more entry level in the UK would be earning, but the experience and dedication that these kind of more experienced people can bring as well. So yeah, sometimes for even like more senior positions, it is worth looking overseas as well, because you can find some really awesome candidates.
Yeah, indeed. What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, sure. So if you're on Facebook, we've probably got some friends in common. You can just find me, Jamie Graham. If you drop me a message, say you heard me on the show, I will definitely add you as a friend. At the moment, I'm trying to grow my Twitter. At the moment, I'm not even on 200 followers. So if you follow me at Jamie Mogul, and if you message me on Twitter, you'll definitely get a response, because no one ever messages me on Twitter. So at Jamie Mogul, would love to see you on Twitter. That would be great.
And you've got you're doing a monthly now, aren't you, down in Brighton? For people in the UK, in the Sussex area, you're going to do meetups on down there.
Yeah,
we're just like-minded sellers.
It's going to start off just meeting in the pub, third Tuesday of the month. Yeah. So yeah, if you're interested in that, drop me a message on Twitter or Facebook. Can get you added. So I think it'd be nice. I've made a lot of my best friends I've made over the last few years have been other Amazon sellers. But generally, a lot of them tend to live a long way away from me. So I would just love to know some more local people, get to know some local sellers.
Excellent. Guys, thank you for joining us. Jamie, thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Sharon will be up next, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thanks, Danny. Cheers, everyone.